This is hard for me to talk about because it's something I haven't talked about for most of my life. But I lost my mom to suicide when I was 9 years old. And I really never shared that with people because I had this underlying fear of I never wanted to have like a crutch or a baked in excuse for anything. And I always felt like if I told people this, they'd have like some level of pity or would give me a handicap of some kind. And I've always feared that.
Welcome to the Rising Leader Podcast, bringing forth the new wave of rising leadership and helping leaders find purpose, connection, and results. This is your host, founder of Alluviance, Alex Kremer. All right, welcome to the Rising Leader Podcast. I'm stoked for this conversation right here. I've actually been ruminating on this conversation for at least like 2 to 3 weeks, just knowing that it was going to be happening. And just like my mind's been kind of working through like, oh, this is one of my favorite topics and things to talk about. With one of my friends and great acquaintances, JC Pollard here, coming in from the beautiful Austin, Texas. First off, JC, what's up, man? Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I've equally been excited for this, so looking forward to it.
I love it, man. I know we got a lot of we've been percolating on some good stuff to chat about, but let me just give a little intro on who you are, just so people know, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, or you can fill in the gaps. But you know, right now you are an account executive at Gong. I think you've been there for just under 3 years, give or take. I love also how on your LinkedIn it says account executive, Aero Presidents Club. I'm like, just full love to see that. You've been posting some phenomenal stuff on LinkedIn, just around your mindset, around sales, prospecting, closing, like just really, I've been enjoying and receiving a lot from your content. And, besides that, I understand, I hate to say this, but you used to be the head of personal training at the University of Oregon. As somebody who, went to University of Washington, go Dogs.
Oh man, we might have to end this podcast early.
But yeah, man, I'm pumped to have you on here. I guess fill in the gaps. Did I capture everything well for your background? I know there's a lot to expand upon, but that's a couple of bullets.
No, man, that's pretty spot on. But yeah, I mean, most of the content I post is SDR AE related, and I try to touch on stuff outside of just like the tactics of sales, but also the things that happen outside of work that can impact your ability to perform better in your job as well. So it was a good summary, man. You nailed it. It's like you do podcasts all the time or something.
Well, it's very in line with the stuff that you post, just because, I do really feel like Alluviance and, the brand of Alluviance and what Rising Leader is really going towards is all specifically focused on sales professionals and sales leaders within the tech space, and how they're going about not just becoming better at the craft and art of sales, which I love that game, but also becoming more clear around who they are and what makes them unique, and also what their individual vision is, and how to find, at the end of the day, purpose, and to be in community with other people who are on that similar trajectory, right? Who are also high performers, and also just say, hey, there's something I'm trying to do here. And I think you're someone who, at least from what I can tell from the outside looking in, really embodies those 3 qualities right there of just, looking for more. I'm curious, are you like that? First off, would you agree with that statement? And also, where did that kind of stem from right there of just that mindset?
Well, it's like it stems from a healthy and unhealthy place of like I'm never satisfied with anything, which is something I'm working on, which is just like being more okay with the present and, acknowledging the wins and stuff. But no, I've just always been wired like that. Like I just crave more, and I have high aspirations. And to your point, I like surrounding myself with people in a similar boat. Thankful to work at Gong, where that summarizes like pretty much the whole sales force. But yeah, 100% spot on.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll give you just a congrats. You just completed the Austin Marathon yesterday. I'm assuming you've been mostly horizontal in some way today, unable to get up. As someone who just ran the New York Marathon, I know the prep and the time and the mindset that goes into that. So first off, congratulations on that. And it sounds like if I'm correct, you maybe exceeded what you were hoping for it there. So we'd love to see how was the marathon, man.
And it was awesome. It's cool seeing And I started training 5 months ago. And so it's cool seeing 5 months of hard work come to fruition. And it felt really good. It went honestly way better than I could have asked for and anticipated. It was still awful. And I'm in so much pain right now as I'm speaking to you. But yesterday, the race day itself was just a blast. And it was just a really fulfilling and rewarding experience seeing the hard work pay off. And ultimately, like you alluded to, like my stretch goal this year, I wanted to do 3 marathons. I've never run one before. And by my third marathon, I wanted to hit a 3:30 marathon time. And I did it in my first marathon, which was like not really necessarily on my radar. So I'm pretty stoked with how it went. I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm hoping to New York this year, man. I got to find a charity. I got to get in because I've heard that's just insane.
I mean, the New York Marathon is quite insane. And what I love about the Austin Marathon too, like, I've always loved Austin.
Yeah.
Even when I was in eighth grade, I remember the University of Texas played USC in the Rose Bowl for the championship. And I grew up in San Diego, so all my friends were rooting for USC. I wore a Longhorns hat.
That is awesome.
And I just there's something about Austin that I really enjoy. So I love that you ran that marathon. So you ended up beating what your goal was. Essentially, you're going to be running 3 this year. You ended up hitting your goal on your first one. I mean, first off, that's amazing. Second off, how did you do that? Like, what was the training or the mindset that went into accomplishing what you were trying to?
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself. I started training 5 months ago. I got on this program called Run with Hal. It's like an app by Hal Higdon. And you essentially...
I used Run with Hal as well,
really?
Actually.
It's awesome, right? Yeah. You plug in your goal, your race date, your current mileage, your current times, and it just formulates a plan for you. And I probably missed like 4 or 5 runs over the last 5 months, the whole plan. So I was just really diligent about the training. And then something else, I was constantly planning for like how race day was going to go. It's like, practice the way you want to perform. And so I was structuring like at this mile, I want to run this time. And I was just trying to strategically think it all out. And so yesterday was so fun to actually like implement that and then see it work. And one of my favorite quotes is like, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of preparation. And that's exactly what I experienced yesterday, which was just, it fired me up. And the people on the sides with signs and like the energy, it was a blast. Like mile 20, I'm saying to myself, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I ever want to run a marathon again. And then today I'm like literally looking at marathons to sign up for a few months from now. It was just a great experience.
Mm. So you were talking the other day about how when you would finish your runs as you were training, how you would then at that point imagine, what if I still had to run more? Talk a little about that. And I'd be curious if you would be open to tying that into, how does that translate to not just the race specifically, but how you're thinking about your life, your career, all of the stuff that you're doing. So I thought it was so profound when you shared it with me.
Yeah, I love just preparing yourself to overcome adversity by like forcing adversity. So this marathon program that I was on, the farthest you ever run is 20 miles. I did 2 20-mile runs in preparation for the marathon. So I knew that on marathon day, I would be running 6.2 additional miles. And so every single training run that I had, when I had 6.2 miles remaining in that run, I thought to myself, this is race day. These next 6.2 miles is going to be race day. It's going to be a mileage you've never done. Like we have to work on just honing in our mindset and no matter what, finishing this run strong. Like I had 6.2 plugged into my mind every single training run. And yesterday when I got to mile 20, it was just such a cool feeling because like my body was exhausted, nothing in the tank, like legs were on fire, but I'm like, okay, this is what we practice for every single training run. 6.2 miles, gut it out, stay strong mentally, find a way to finish. I think that applies to everything. And I also think that just applies to the power of like actually being prepared and knowing your stuff. I mean, it's just like in high school or college when you would show up for a test knowing you didn't study very well and that like anxiety and that level of nerves versus when you worked your ass off and you crammed and you knew every question and you went into it feeling confident. It's like the exact same thing. When you are doing everything you can in your control to execute at the highest level, and then it comes time to execute, you just have this like level of calm and you're just ready to do it. And what I
Mm.
experienced yesterday, which was, I'm thankfully, so much could have gone wrong, but it didn't.
What I really like about that, it feels like you're preparing your mind, 5 months in advance. You're
Mm-hmm.
imagining yourself there. I almost feel it like, we're throwing an immersion, in July 14th through 16th. And it's actually going to be in Austin. So we'll need to maybe come and give some good speaking tips there. But what I shared with my team is, hey, the container for that immersion has opened. It's, we're not even in at the end of February now, but that thing has been opened. That entity itself, that the mindset that goes in towards that, our hearts opening towards like thinking about that, it's opened. And when you acknowledge that, it allows to kind of work in the background. Your brain, your body, your heart, all of it is really starting to say, okay, like even without you cognitively thinking, like, okay, I need to think about this. I got to start prepping. I get like, yes, that stuff is important, but like when you're not thinking about anything, you're thinking about it, or at least it's processing back there. And so I feel like by the time, exactly. And so I feel like, once you got to mile 20 on your marathon, your body and your brain was like, we've been stoked. You probably like, oh man, finally we're here. This is what I've been waiting for. I've been eager. I've been mentally preparing and putting in just an intentionality so that when I got to this point, I was ready for this.
100%. It's going to sound cringy, but like, I'm kind of cringy. Um, I think this is so many parallels to cold calls. I used to lead a cold call enablement session for SDRs at Gong, but the summary of the session was all about mindset. It wasn't about anything tactically in a cold call. Like there are different sessions on how to handle objections, all that stuff. My session was all just about how do we have the right mindset going into a call block. And the high level summary of it is like, you have the foundation, like you've worked to nail the pitch, the objections, the persona. When somebody picks up the phone, like everything else gets put to the side and you just have to execute. Like the foundation is there. And that's exactly how it felt yesterday. Like foundation's been laid, the work's been done, you've got it in the bag, you just have to execute. And then like I was actually thinking about that middle of the run, which is a little bit of a glimpse into how much of a nerd I am about this stuff. But yeah, it's exactly that. Like you have this North Star for so long, and then you prepare the right way, and all that's left is to execute, and then you just do it.
So, it's really funny that you share that because I remember the first half marathon that I ever ran. It was in Seattle. And I put some training effort into that. I probably put 2 months or so. Running 13 miles, running 26 is, you definitely got to put some time. But running 13 miles, if you've never done it before, you got to also start to put in some, tempo towards that.
Yeah.
And I trained for 2 months. And I remember running my half marathon. And the entire time that I've been training, I've been thinking about this race, thinking about how it's going to feel, thinking about crossing the finish line, thinking about just like being there and in the heart of it. And then as I'm running this half marathon, the only thing I could think about was how valuable and awesome the past 2 months of training was. How I would go out, when it was 6:00, when it was dark, because I ran it in the winter, so it got dark early, and I put on a headlamp and I ran 5 miles because I was at Outreach at the time. I was really at the early stages of, I think, even being an account executive, and just like, the mental fortitude that you need to have when it's Q4, when it's dark outside, when, how the half marathon was just my place, just be like, let it go, dude.
Yeah, enjoy it. Like so, you worked, enjoy it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I just found it so funny. The entire time I was training, I was looking towards the marathon. When the entire time I was in the marathon, I was looking back at the past 3 months. And I was like, there's a lesson here in some sort of way.
That's so interesting. I was going into the marathon anticipating a similar experience of like, man, this is going to be 3 to 4 hours of like reflection and time to think. Dude, I didn't have a single thought except like run forward. Like that was the only letdown. I was expecting some like profound like clicking moments. I was just like 1 foot ahead of that. It was tunnel vision for the whole time, which was kind of a unique experience in its own. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure you read Atomic Habits because it's like the thing to do. And I think what I experienced that was so true is that book talks a lot about how you expect like the gratification to come from the reward, but it's really the process that's enjoyable and like the pursuit of that reward. And that's like 100% how I felt about this marathon. Like the waking
Mm,
up and training and putting in the work, that was more enjoyable than the actual result.
yeah. Well, what I want to kind of, dive into a little bit, and this was, one of the main things that we wanted to discuss is, what was your why for running the marathon? And, I think you have a really, vulnerable, authentic, personal story as it relates to this and the greater vision as to what you're doing. And
Yeah.
that's also made you a lot of who you are today. And also why I think your story and what you're racing for, what you're doing for will impact and be so valuable to so many people, myself very much included. So walk us through just, what was the reason why you're running and what were you running for?
Yeah, and this is hard for me to talk about because it's something I haven't talked about for most of my life. But I lost my mom to suicide when I was 9 years old, and I really never shared that with people because I had this underlying fear of I never wanted to have like a crutch or a baked in excuse for anything, and I always felt like if I told people this, they'd have like some level of pity or would give me a handicap of some kind, and I've always feared that. But after, being an adult for a few years and working in sales and like getting exposure to how relevant mental health is, I'm like, okay, this is like a powerful story and something that I want to talk about. And so I actually didn't necessarily sign up to do a marathon with the idea of doing it in my mom's honor or raising money. But as I ran more, I think running is like the most ideal time to think and to reflect. I just like it was something that was on my mind a lot. And so a couple months ago, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to actually do this for and dedicate this to. And so
Mm.
I decided, I'm like, you know what? I built somewhat of a following on LinkedIn, small but mighty. And this is a cause that's really near and dear to my heart. I know a lot of people are struggling with this. So I'm like, I'm going to run this in honor of my mom and try to raise some money for suicide prevention. Set a goal of raising like $1,000, which I thought was like, there's no way, right? I haven't met the majority of these people on LinkedIn. Like, there's no way. We hit $1,000 like 6 hours later, and then ended up raising close to $5,000 for this first marathon. So it was just really cool. And
So
I
epic.
just think running is like it's been so good for my mental health, and so I just think it's a really unique marriage of like doing an activity that is so positive for your mental health while raising awareness for mental health and then also raising money for mental health in honor of somebody who
Hmm.
lost a battle to mental health. It just felt like it was too perfect of a combination.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, it's so near and dear to your heart, and I'm assuming I love what you shared of like it's something that was on your mind a lot, and this gave you the space to be with it. I mean, you know, first off, like I just like I acknowledge that that's probably something that will never what happened and the impact on you will never leave you, right? And you will always know that, and to honor it in your own way by doing this and doing something impactful to support other people. I mean, yeah, I mean that just it's so profound right
I
there.
think profound's the perfect word for it. And it's also been really refreshing. Um, I think LinkedIn has a connotation of being like a little bit fake and cringy, and I thought that too for a while. And now, like the amount of messages I've gotten from people who reached out, like I tried to take my own life multiple times and have found your post really inspired, like actual real human connections and people that have been found some level of like either inspiration or hope or anything out of my posts. I'm like, that's crazy to me. Like I just started posting sales tactics one day and fast forward a few months and people are reaching out, sharing these like really deep personal stories. And like, that is such a cool feeling. And it's been a really good reminder of like how many just really quality people there are out there. And it's been a cool way to use the platform.
Yeah. Well, I think why there's some people who reach out to you. I mean, it's funny because I ran my marathon for mental health
Saw that.
awareness too. It was
Yeah.
under, NAMI. And that I also am someone who very much participates in the mental health, in the game of keeping myself mentally strong, because there's stuff that is inherent in my family and in my genes and just my typology, I guess you can say, and towards a downward inclination, a depressive type of way, if I'm not supporting myself in the ways that we do. And I also do know that when I'm at the deeper grooves of that, that's a very lonely place. All of a sudden you start to, at least my journey of it, I kind of start to just distance myself from people, whether it be my family, my close personal friends, my community, really just kind of go into my own, world and have to do some excavation there to really pick myself back up. But when someone like yourself or others post something online, it's a way of saying, oh shit, I'm not alone. Other people are going through this too. Right? They're at their most, isolated moments. So they're like, oh shit, I'm actually not alone.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the vulnerability and authenticity, like I'm making the LinkedIn platform more about that. And, when people actually speak to true, oh man, this is deep and meaningful. Everybody's like, wow, my heart just opened from that. Thank you for that.
I love that. And that's exactly what I experienced. And like, I've always just been so hesitant to talk about it. But then like this little GoFundMe I made for the marathon, like the people that donated were coworkers who I love, bosses who I admire, people I've sold gong to who I didn't even realize we built that level of a connection with. Friends from the past, friends from college, and then people on the platform I've never met in my life. And it was such a cool reminder of like, there's more people pulling for you than you think. And people are actually like really supportive when you do open up, and it's a hard thing to do. So it was honestly, it just made me once again like have restored faith in humanity. And I'm glad you kind of experienced something similar. And to your point, like the amount of people who reach out and have a similar experience, you're like, oh wow, yeah, this is not just me.
It's lately I've been studying the hero's journey. I don't know if you've ever heard of the hero's journey. It's a guy by the name of Joseph Campbell wrote this book of, I believe it's called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. I'll have to fact check myself on that one. But there's the whole story of the hero's journey, which is essentially 12 steps that almost every storyline, whether it be movie or book, or even like, the story of Jesus and other, spiritual beings have followed through this storyline. Luke Skywalker went through it. Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games went through it. Harry Potter went through it. And there's a couple of steps in it that really resonate with me. And the first one is going through, it's called like your tests, your enemies, and developing allies. Like you're going through like tiny little areas to just like get coached and perfect yourself and sharpen the sword and figure out just like you're getting better. Right. And right before you try to go and do what's called the ordeal, which is the thing that you like are being called to do, like, really, really, really execute on, you have to go to the cave, the innermost cave, where you actually come, you've just been working really hard, but before you can actually go face the enemy or the battle, you have to first say, but there's that one thing that I need to conquer within myself, the inward thing within myself. And once they do that, and in a way, there's a part of you that dies. You're letting that thing go. It says, okay, I am now ready to go face this. And, part of what you're speaking to, even of mental health and all that, there's that thing that in all of us that we all really need to go to the innermost cave and nourish it, be with it, process it, talk about it, integrate it, you just tend to it. And I think that's very much what your message is that you're speaking to, and your posts and all of that is like, be with your shit.
Yeah.
And also here's how your mindset should be as you're being with your shit.
Yeah. And it's also like an ongoing thing. Like the last thing I ever want to come off on or as on a podcast is like I've reached this destination where like I found the perfect balance and I'm at peace with all it. Like this is like an ongoing thing that you're constantly dealing with, but I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that's what
Hmm.
David Goggins says what he is doing when he's doing these insane runs and these like physical challenges is he calls it exploring the dark matter of the mind, which is really what you're talking about. Like using physical challenges or external stimulus to find the deepest, darkest like caves, what's really going on with you. And so I like that. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if, we have the ability to speak about not just because, I mean, what you said is valid right there. It's like, I'm not trying to come off as like the expert here.
Right.
and neither am I. And I think a lot of people have a tendency to share about a struggle they went through after they've gone through it.
Like it's past tense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, when I was going through it, but I'm out now.
Yeah.
I'm good now. And very few people, I think, like truly like, and this is like something I aspire towards. That's also fucking terrifying, is to share it as you're going through it, as you're processing it, and don't have it figured out yet.
Not that this is the same level of importance at all as mental health, but I've been super open and transparent about sharing my performance in my job on LinkedIn, my quota attainment, emails that have worked, cold call tactics. And it's kind of a uniquely scary thing because I'm in a new segment now, closed $0 this year. I mean, it just started February, but like I've built this muscle of being transparent in a year that I like hyper succeeded. And I'm going to keep sharing my performance, good, bad, or ugly, continuing going forward. And that's been kind of a scary thing as well. Cause like I haven't reached the mountaintop. Like I had one really, really good year of sales. There's a lot of people that have had one really, really good year of sales and then like regress to the mean. So kind of built this precedent where I just have to be open and transparent with how I'm doing. And so that's kind of something I'm always thinking about. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go do this again. Or I'm going to be posting about 40% quota attainment. Like I better kick this shit in gear. But yeah.
Well, I think for you to have the ability to do that, there has to be a certain level of like, I don't care what people think about me.
Yeah.
But I think to accompany the I don't care what people think about me, and I'm going to coin a phrase that you said in our first conversation, which I want to talk about a little bit, is to be not just abundant in terms of your mindset, but unwaveringly confident.
Mm-hmm.
Unwaveringly confident. And I wrote that down because I was like, damn, that's like what is it like to be unwaveringly confident?
I don't know.
And how do you what does that even mean to you?
Yeah. No, I think it's just like, and I'm once again, journey, not a destination. I'm not reached a place where I'm at an unwavering confidence level in a million things, but specifically with sales, like just recognize, and I think it's so applicable to anything. Like there's going to be so many obstacles and hurdles in anything you do. We'll use sales as like an anecdote here, but macroeconomic conditions are getting tougher. Specifically in my space, it's getting way more competitive. Company grows, territories get smaller. Like there's always external stimulus that are going to make things harder. But if you can maintain unwavering confidence and conviction that you'll find a way to get it done, I think that just leads to doing the behaviors and the activities that will allow you to succeed rather than leaning on the crutch of all these external challenges and letting that infiltrate your mind. Like the one thing you can control is my thought last year was like, I don't care. I'm going to find a way to go close a lot of business. Like it's out there. I'm going to find a way. Objections, obstacles, people say no, whatever. We'll find a way to get it done. So definitely need to still apply that to a lot of other areas in life. But that was, I think, the number one thing that allowed me to have a really good year last year. It wasn't anything I do in my sales cycle. It wasn't demos or discovery calls. It was like that abundance mindset and just level of confidence that there is a way. I'll find a way. We'll make this happen.
Mm-hmm. I like that. There is a way. Like you're not, I almost took it as when you said it as like being unwaveringly, you know what I'm trying to say, confident of you're saying that there's a way.
You'll find a way. There's a way.
There's a possibility.
Yeah.
There's infinite possibilities to make this happen.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Like, it literally is all about how do we take an obstacle, something that most people would view as a hurdle or a speed bump or the universe like making it harder on you, and not only overcome it, but actually flip it into an opportunity. For example, macroeconomic conditions get way harder. CFOs are scrutinizing every single dollar, right? Like every deal that comes across the finish line, you have to build a ironclad ROI, a business case. Like everything has become harder to sell a software. That's an obstacle, right? And one mentality would be like, that sucks. It's so much harder to sell. My first reaction after reading this book was like, oh my gosh, what a unique opportunity to run a airtight sales cycle and build really strong business cases. And then think about how that's going to work when the economy does turn around and people are buying again. And you take that skill set you've developed in a time of turmoil. Like, but that's just an example of every time that there's something in your way, how do you view it as a positive? How are you like, this is a unique opportunity to do X, Y, and Z?
I love how you're changing your relationship to it. Like as you were sharing, like I thought back to there's this old guy who used to be on my team, Ross, and his uncle I think was a Navy SEAL, just a complete badass. He used to talk wonderful things about him. And I'm going to butcher the story, but I remember Ross telling me that his uncle said when they'd be out on a mission and something would go awry, they forgot to deliver this sort of thing. Oh, this part of the plan got messed up. Whatever it might be. The Navy SEALs motto is great.
I love that. Great.
And it even like, I don't know if you read, there's the Russell Wilson book.
I'm a Broncos fan. I can't read it. I hate him right now.
Well, I'm a Seahawks fan.
Yeah.
So it was it's a tough one, but he talks about having what's called the neutral mindset, where it's like, you're not getting caught up in the, all right, times are great. Love it. This is amazing. And you're also not getting caught up in the, oh my God, times really suck. What am I going to do? You're just like, it's consistently, even if like there's, 3 minutes left on the clock and you're down by 10, points, Russell Wilson's mindset is just like, cool. What are the facts?
Yeah.
What do I do to go forward?
Great. Onward. I love that.
But you're taking it, but I like what you're saying even a little bit more, because you're taking it more like, great opportunity to learn.
Yeah. I think that's the difference. And that's what I loved about this book. Cause like, I've always thought it was, difficult to do, but pretty obvious that like an obstacle's there. How do we get over it? Like that to me is like relatively intuitive. Not saying that it comes easily, but like that makes sense. But taking that extra level and being like, this is so cool. Now I can do this. I love that. I thought that was awesome.
That's good. So talk to me now about, as you are continuing to go on, your path and, your way up to being a strong account executive and, eventually on to leadership, most likely, just talk to me about, how do we tie all of this in that we just discussed? Your mindset, your being authentic. How do we tie that into leadership? Because, you are right now an individual contributor. Technically. I hate that name, individual contributor, but you right now, you're an IC. How do you still bring in this concept of leadership to you in the current stage of your life right now, and how that impacts other people that you're with?
It's a good question. I think title and if you're a leader are not even close to correlated, honestly. But to your point, like I don't have a direct leadership role by any means. I think the thing I try to incorporate in every aspect of my career, and my life is just authenticity. And so, honestly, so given the history I had, like losing a parent at a really young age, I've just had an early understanding that like this whole life thing is not guaranteed and tomorrow is not a given and you can't really take things for granted. And so I show up to work with a pretty positive, borderline corny enthusiasm like every day. And I remember one time I led a team meeting. We had just like gotten assigned a new team of account executives. We all knew each other as colleagues, but didn't know each other that well. And I reached out to my manager. I'm like, Jesse, I think we have an opportunity to do something that brings us closer as like humans and allows each other to get to know each other on a deeper level. And so I led a session, which is essentially like you go around the room and you share like what's the biggest like thing you've overcome or obstacle in your life, and then what's your North Star? Like, why are you doing this job? Are you working hard? All that stuff. And I told, for the first time, my team the story of my mom and everything. And I remember one of my colleagues was like, after, he's like, JC, like I always thought that this was like somewhat fake, like your energy and the way you show up. And he's like, now I understand like why you're so positive. And so I just think people resonate to authenticity. I think that's why my LinkedIn is like starting to get some traction, is it's like 1000% me, and like whether you like it or not, it's authentic. And so I think that's step one, is people can smell bullshit from like a mile away. And if you're yourself, people gravitate towards that, no matter if you're in a leadership position technically, or if you're just an individual contributor. People kind of gravitate towards real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, I've led, quite a few teams in my day of account executives and SDRs and all of that. And, when it's a team that all just reports to me as the so-called leader, those teams kind of are lame in its own way, right? I mean, sure, we can do them and that's just the stage, but like, I don't want to be the only damn leader there.
Yeah.
I want each individual to be a leader, right? And the first step is to lead yourself, which I think, you are a great embodiment of like, hey, before I can even think about, impacting or influencing anybody else, if I'm not impacting, influencing myself in a positive way and also bringing compassion to myself, good luck doing anything else. But by you doing that and leading yourself, what I see you doing is then that just naturally transmits to the people on your team. It's almost like your orb around you is starting to, come from a certain higher level of frequency that just people are picking up that frequency and being called into a higher level of leadership themselves. And that turns into like everybody's starting to vibrate from the same type of thing, and it's becoming the team. And so it's like, you don't need the title, like you said, to be the damn leader.
I think what you said too is so true. It's like, it starts with you got to do the work and do your job. So I just got promoted to mid-market and I'm on a new team now. And I don't care what I did last year. Like, we are all on a level playing field now. We're all at zero. Brand new year, brand new team. And so I told this to my new manager. I'm like, I'm not going to come in with any expectations, assumptions that I'm going to be a leader on this team, or come in with any kind of ego. Like, step one is I need to prove I can perform in this role first, and like focus on me. And I want to make sure that I get to know everyone before I like attempt to step up in any leadership role. And I think that's part of it too. Like Kelly Wright, who got, she was a board member at Gong and then got hired on as our president. The first thing she did for the first 2 months was called a listening tour, where she literally just interviewed almost every employee at the company for 15 minutes and didn't implement a single change or anything. But it's like, step one, let's just understand like how people are thinking, how everyone's feeling. And that's kind of like the approach I'm trying to take this new team as well. It's like, I don't want to force myself into any kind of role until I know like what's best for everyone and can prove I can do it myself. So that's just my approach. We'll see how it works out. Hopefully I can replicate last year, but.
Well, it's always stage zero.
Yeah.
It's like I used to have a motto on my team, and I maybe even created T-shirts out of this because I love the motto so much. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah.
It's just like first part of the first part. And that's a mindset right there. That's man. Even if I have, I hope to be on my deathbed and be like, beginning of the beginning, baby.
Yeah.
That's actually truly what I believe. Like, hey, it's always there's an infinite journey that we are on here, but it's more of like, hey, I'm going to continuously begin, whether you want to call it the beginner's mindset or just like a level of curiosity that says, man, sure, I might know some shit, but like I got a lot more shit to learn.
So much. Oh my God. I don't know it. Yeah. I don't know anything. It's actually, it's crazy to think about like how much more we don't know than we'll ever know. And like, I don't even know the thing that, but the only other thing I wanted to add, because you asked about how to like be a leader in a non-leadership role, but I think this applies to leadership roles as well, is just giving back. Like the amount of people that have taken time out of their day to mentor and to give me guidance as I was an SDR, wanted to become a really good SDR, and then was a SDR, wanted to become an AE, and then a young, early, shitty AE trying to become a proficient AE. Is like the amount of people who went out of their way to hop on a call or provide guidance or do a mock call meant the world to me, and it helped me so much. And so you try to like pass the torch along. So whether that's, helping other SDRs or helping a new AE or hopping on calls with someone, like I always think it's important to just try to give back as you learn. And that was kind of the catalyst for like even starting posting on LinkedIn. So I was like, man, I think I'm learning things here that are really helping me. Like it would be such a waste not to try to share that with other people, and hopefully they can replicate that success. So I think that's a huge component to leadership. And like I've been fortunate to have the best managers in the world at Gong who do that and lead by example in that regard as well. Just constantly giving back, constantly sharing best practices. So been exposed to really good leaders.
I think when you begin to teach something is when you begin to master it, right? When it's not just about you doing it, but you actually have to take this thing out, you have to put it on your hand, you have to look at it in different angles and explain to us something about why you do it. And so it's like, it is self-serving in a way, is to teach. Like I still remember when I was an account executive, and I knew I wanted to be a leader, and I knew that I wanted to be effective once I got the opportunity to officially have the title. I actually reached out to SDRs, and I asked if I could mentor them. Right. And, I was like, hey, I think I could give you some value, and I could definitely gain a lot of value from how to coach and how to lead and how to mentor. And I still remember, I've shared the story, once I think on this podcast actually, but I still remember, I was teaching the new initial meeting deck or the initial meeting deck to a guy named Devin on our team. He was an SDR, knew he wanted to be an AE. And I went through it all, like how to do the frame, the discovery, the speak to the trends, speak to the problems that organizations are facing, and then speak to how we specifically do it. And I got to explain it. And the first thing he says is, Alex, I didn't realize how much psychology is really built into our initial meeting. And I was like, you know what, Devin, neither did I until I just explained it to you.
Yeah.
And so by going through it, all of a sudden I had such a deeper way of like, oh wow, I do that here because of this. And then I could tweak it a little bit. I could sharpen it. I had a greater depth
I love that.
to understanding it.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I'm trying to think back to like the things I've learned by teaching, and there's certainly a lot. Wow, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna sit on that one for a while.
Yeah. Even when it comes to posting, when you're required to write down a lesson or a virtue that you have or a perspective that you have, so what is my perspective again? What is my why do I care about this? And you're supposed to write it in, I remember even creating my website, writing down what I do like 1,000 different times in 1,000 different ways for different places. I'm like, so it's a continual like, so what do I do again? Why do I do it?
Have you always found that you get like greater satisfaction out of helping somebody else like reach a milestone or improve than your own milestones? Or what kind of made you know like that you wanted to be in a leadership role?
Yeah, I really absolutely, I love it when I perform. It feels great. And I love making a team perform together. So yes, I like seeing an individual perform for sure. But what I love actually the most is I like seeing a team perform together.
Cool.
Right. Like even when I played, I grew up playing baseball and football, one player could be really great, but if the team lost, nobody was going to be happy. And, even now I started coaching a softball team that like all my friends and I would play on. And I really started to be like, I fucking love this.
Yeah.
Like I love sending out the emails. I love giving the fist down, pump to everybody, before the game and kind of like setting the lineup. I loved that. And especially when everybody started enjoying it and be like, oh, there's a culture here.
Yeah.
I love the culture aspect of it. And when the culture is great, then the individuals are feeling great. And then they're succeeding individually. That's then impacting all their personal life, their family or friends. I'm like, man,
that's cool.
Then that gives me purpose. right? Then I'm like, okay, now it's not just about me. It's about so much more than me.
Oh, I love that. That's really cool. I haven't had the opportunity to like create that yet, but that sounds like something that would be pretty motivating, fulfilling, is creating that team feel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think you'd be a natural at it, my friend.
Well, see, I gotta learn more about selling first. That's how I'm approaching this. Is like I gotta go up market and learn a lot more and mess up a lot more and improve a lot before I'm ready to put people's careers under my name. So we'll see. One day. But right now, I'm just learning.
Well, this is what I'll say, man. I have one more question for you, but before I dive into that question, man, I do just want to acknowledge you first off for just being on the show. I enjoyed this conversation, and we talked about some of my favorite stuff around mental health and around the journey and around sales and around leadership. Like, thanks for jamming on that, and just I appreciate your journey, man, and your authenticity and your vulnerability that you're going and. Hopefully, there's some account executives or sales professionals out there who are not in a title leadership role that also say, oh, you can still be a leader without the title by doing exactly the things that you are doing and speaking your truth. So thank you for doing that. And please, for, all out there and for our benefits, please keep on doing it. And my last question for you is this, man. This show is obviously called the Rising Leader Podcast. So I'm curious, what do you view as the rising leader that is occurring within the world today?
Well, first of all, to touch on everything, I really enjoyed the conversation. I actually just saw the clock for the first time and realized we're 46 minutes in. That flew by. Man, what is the rising leader? I don't necessarily know. I think it's like this new wave of leadership that's less hierarchical and it's more collaborative. That's how I would view it. And like, it's less so much, somebody who's just, you're reporting to them and what they say goes. And I feel like nowadays it's more of like a dialogue and a conversation. And the second component to that, I feel like the rising leader is about the human and not the performer. So understanding what motivates somebody on a personal level, understanding their world, their challenges, their life, not just their metrics and their quota and their number and that kind of stuff. I was pretty on the spot, man. I don't know how I did, but that's
I vibe with that answer, man. I love that. I love that it's not about just the numbers. It's more about who you are and what's going on with you.
Mm-hmm. And that's, so it's conversation. Like my manager, Jesse, who is an unbelievable leader, almost never gives me an answer when I have a question. Almost never. She's asking questions in return, and it's like a back and forth, and she's helping like me come to realizations on my own versus telling me what to do. Like, I can't remember the last time she told me what to do, but I think that's the new wave. It's like, how do we coach somebody to arrive on their own and in their own way? Yeah.
Now that's a good manager right there.
She's awesome. She's got promoted to director because she's fucking awesome. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right on, brother. Well, hey man, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for, I love your definition of the rising leader. Definitely resonates a lot. And keep the mental health motto, mindset, and the unwavering confidence that there is a possibility for it to happen. Going strong, man. So thank you. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining. Thanks for listening to the Rising Leader Podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you get notified every time a new episode releases. If you know someone who wants to take their lives and their career to the next level, send them this episode so we can all rise together. For more information, check out alluviance.co. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime, keep letting it flow.